Alright, this is Wicked Al, otherwise known as Alex Kolitz, and I've been racing Outlaws since '08 with independent rear suspension. Started off on an Outlaw 500, so I've had a lot of experience with independent rear suspension, how it works. I am not a certified mechanic. The way I learn things is to pull things apart and put them back together and hope I don't have any parts left over. So what I'm going to do, seeing as there's a lot of new people out on the forums, and I see there are a lot of questions about how the back end is made up and how to do this and how to do that, I thought I'd just go through, take some of my spare parts I have on the shelf and show them to you so you can get an idea of how this goes together. Now I have some music playing in the background. It's my 80s music. You have to live with it because it's kind of dead sounding without it, so live with it. That's the price you have to pay to watch this video. Okay, so as you can tell, some of this stuff is dirty. That's because I ruined them, got something different and replaced them, and some of it's broken, and I'll show you what's broken so you can be aware that these things do happen. I'm quite an expert actually at breaking my quad, so I'll go through some of the weak points on how this thing is set up. First of all, this is the lower A-arm in the back end. Okay, so it's going to sit, this is the center carrier, it sits in the middle, and your axle is attached to that, and it goes to the lower arm. You have the outside bearing carrier. That's what this thingummy is, okay? And it's going to attach to here, and the axle is going to attach to the CV joint, which will go through this bearing carrier. This is a CV joint, okay? It's going to go through the bearing here, and you're going to attach the hub to it and attach to your wheel, which will have your tire attached so you can get some traction. This is what the hub looks like. Now this is only a part of a hub because the rest of it breaks off. These are cast aluminum parts and they will do this over time. I'm considering making some out of billet 6061. The same size and everything, but it'll be a little more robust, a little more structural integrity there. I have to figure out or afford to buy myself a broach so I can make the splines on the inside. But it'll fit over. I'm going to take this off just so you don't have to play around with it right now. But these splines will match up with these splines. These are called splines, just in case you're wondering. So they'll match up like that. Now when this turns, it'll rotate this, your wheel, and your tire. So this is inside, and it sits like this. Now what this does is space it on the bearing. So if you take a look inside this bearing carrier, it is in fact a bearing, and it still turns. That's a miracle, really. But this will sit inside of it like that, with this coming through like this, and then your hub on it like that. So that's basically how this whole back end goes, or the outside goes together. And you put these off to the side, so you don't have to look at them. Now this is CV joint. It's missing one thing though, and those are the ball bearings that go in here. Okay, so this is the CV joint is a specialized type of ball bearing. These are the balls. The rest is the bearing here, and it allows the axle to pivot while inside. So it can move up and down and still rotate and move the tires no matter where your suspension is acting. Okay? So when we're taking a look at this, this is called the inside race. This is the cage that holds the bearings in place. They'll sit in there like that. And this is the outside race. And so when the axle spins, the balls are in this groove and they rotate up and down like that, and allow it to have a misalignment or an angle, and that's what gives you a thrust without having a solid axle. So you have a lot of flexibility. A much better ride than a straight axle. I really like the independent rear suspension. I went to Yamaha YZ450, great bike, but it's solid axle, and I just couldn't stand that. I had to go back to the Polaris Outlaw. You have a retaining ring in here, and that's to hold the inner race in there. So let's pull this out. You got to line it up. Getting the balls out of here can be a little bit tricky, but it can be done, obviously. That's how it goes. So you notice I got this part to come in through the hole there so I can lift up and then rotate it through. Now when you take a look at this, it is not symmetrical, right? You take a look at this side, it's a little higher up. The dip here doesn't go down as far as it does on this side. But this has a chamfer on the inside. What this is for is so it can slide over the axle, and it compresses this ring and slides past that ring. Okay, my hand's not going to do it. Usually I have a big hammer, I smack the hammer, it compresses the ring, and this will go all the way down on there. But this is how it's going to be inside your CV joint. So in order to get it out, you take the big hammer and you knock it on here, and it'll knock off of the axle. Okay, now I use a big hammer. It doesn't seem to damage things too bad, so I've been using that successfully for years. There are, I'm sure, better ways to do it, but that's what I do. So when you're taking a look at this, that's the way to remember which side goes to the axle. It's always going to be this chamfered side that goes over the splines here, okay? So when you go put things back together and you're wondering which way it goes, chamfer side out, it's going to slide in there. Now this cage is going to be a little more tricky, because as we take a look at that, let's get it, there we go. You got to have it so this flat part right here goes across these flats here. Sorry if I didn't have you in frame. So this flat part here goes across this flat part here, and it'll slide out. But if it's not right on, you're not going to get anything. So it comes out. Now you take a look at it, and what I do is when I pull it out, when I disassemble this thing, and I have all the grease and everything in here, when I rotate it out and pull it out, my thumb is still on that leading edge. It comes out. I place it down right away, face up, so I always know that this side is the part that goes out. Looking at it, this looks symmetrical, but it could be off a few thousandths on one side or the other, and I don't know that. I've not measured it. I don't see any markings on one side that'll lead me to believe are something I can cue off of to say, okay, this side always goes inboard to the axle. You can see the wear marks on here as it rotates around and moves with the outside race. You can also see in here where the balls wear up on the inside edge there. Now, again, I don't know what the tolerance level is for that, but you can see that there. There's some material missing there. There's some gouging going on. At a certain point, it starts making noises and clicking. That's when the CV joints are going bad. There's something going on. Either the balls are getting flat spots on them, these are getting flat spots. Things aren't no longer any good. Speaking of gouges and stuff, the grease that comes with this, I've found out, is not the best. I've pulled these things apart several times and have found some grease that's caked up and dried out, and another grease that's really liquidy. That's not doing a good job of keeping the metal parts separate and keeping a lubrication in between the metal parts, and that's what's going to give you longevity in here and keep the heat down, because the heat is the killer. Now I found a little trick. This thing, the inside isn't too bad to put back together, but this outside one can be tricky with the balls and everything. So what I do is now I have no clue which way is actually out on this. I have this in storage and don't really care, because I have new ones on my quad now. And I'm just going to drop this in there. There we go. Okay, that's what I needed. Okay, this is backwards. I got to get that chamfered side around. There we go. So that's what I wanted. Now what I found out, these are really tight, putting them in. So I put one in first, and then I come across it opposite side and pull this out and put another one in, put it down. Then I rotate up this way, put two in, and rotate up this way and put two in. Now these are going in real easy. In fact, my guess is these are not the right ones. They're two different sizes that I found out. The inside ones, I do believe, must be the smaller ones, because these went in really easy, and you can see there's a lot of room in there. Normally what happens is you put this in here and you have to push hard to get it to, you see that slop in there? That won't have slop. It'll fit snugly in that cage. And it's really tough, so you push it in there, make sure it clicks in, and then you push down, and it's hard to rotate around. In fact, sometimes I find getting something else to push down on here helps to lever the other side up so you can get the ball in there. And I always do this with grease already in there, because I've already coated a lot of grease in the bottom, grease everywhere, so there's no metal on metal contact when this thing goes together. So that goes together like that, then it's put it on the end, and then smack it on there. Now before I smack it on there, I have a rubber boot on there, and usually I'll put a little bit of grease on the inside so it slides down the shaft easy. Otherwise you're going to be doing like what I'm doing here, and it's going to be a pain in the butt. There we go. Now you may want to move this even further up just to have access to this end while you're assembling it. Make sure you pull it back here, because you're not going to be able to get that clamp on it if it's not in that little notch there. So let's go to the inside. Let's go to center bearing carrier. That's where everyone seems to have a lot of fun putting these things together. Let's get the balls back because I need them for the center. We're going to take this out. This is the inside boot, very uniquely shaped. The other boot, this boot here, there's a lot of boots that look like this. So it's generally a little cheaper. They were considerably less expensive. These were like 60 bucks once upon a time. I think they're a lot less now. Okay, we're not going to worry about that right now. We're going to get this out of the way. Get that center bearing carrier. Now I know this is to the front of the quad. We know this because this is where the brakes are going to attach to it. And this attaches to the bottom of the frame. And this part here is what's used to put tension on the chain to get the chain where you need it. But we're going to go ahead and just lift this up on side. Now obviously if it's on the quad you're not going to disassemble it all this way to do this. But I just had the spare ones around here and it's a lot easier for you to see what's going on. Then I'm going to go ahead and assemble the CV joint. Now you might notice this is a little different. This is a CV joint, right? Well, this outside race is actually this whole hub, this interior part here. That's the outside race for the joint. And if you take a look, you can see these long grooves. That allows the whole joint or the whole axle to plunge in and out because as the axle goes up and down, it's not perfectly pivoting in the center point there. As it comes up, it'll go in a little bit, and as it goes up further, it'll come back out some. So that allows for movement of both axles. There's only about 1.5 inches worth of movement for both of them combined, so not a ton, but there's enough to get the job done. Let's see if I can do this here. Get this guy. Again, same thing. We're going to put this into the cage first because it's really hard to, impossible to put it on otherwise. And we've got to make sure this is going. Now this one is obviously asymmetrical. It has a cone shape, and the cone goes out. So the small side is on the inside of where the axle is, and the large side flares out towards the joint there. So that's where we're going to position this. And I'm going to give it a big whack. And you see there's where the ring goes, and it seats right in really nice right around the top of that inner race. Now this is hardened metal, so I'm not worried too much about hitting it, but I'm not going to sit it on there and gently hit it because it's going to take 20,000 whacks to get it in there. Now if you notice, as I'm pulling this out, I'm trying to rotate around, it doesn't rotate there, but if I move it out here, it'll rotate quite easily, and that's where I'm going to have it to get these balls in there. Now without grease, the grease, this is what I was talking about, snapping it in. This is what it should be like on the other side. The grease also helps to hold it in place. So I'll have this all greased up really good before I put the balls in here. I always wear these nitrile gloves. I'll go through several pairs of gloves during a CV change. It just keeps me a lot cleaner, and everything else, the hammers and stuff, a lot cleaner. Now before I put this on here, I'm going to show you something because this is going to be important when taking this out. We have a little devil here. That's this ring. Now this clip goes into this groove right here. See this groove on the inside? That's where it goes. Now I'm not going to put it on here yet. I'm going to put this on first and then I'll put it on. But it's really difficult to pull this ring out of that groove. But if you take a look here, I don't know if you can see it, if the light's shining. You see right there? Take a look between that groove there and that one there. That has a little notch in there. I took my Dremel and ground a little notch. What that allows me to do is take this dental pick and get down underneath that ring and lift that ring up. And then once I do that, it's really simple to pull this out. And that's one of the little tricks. After changing this a couple of times and really having to struggle with that, I figured there had to be a better way to do it. And there is indeed a better way. And so here we'll just go ahead and line up the grooves there. And there it goes. So as you can see how it can plunge in and out. Even at an angle, it plunges in and out. Okay. I'm going to put this on its side. Find the groove for that ring. Fortunately, everything's kind of a cone shape and pushes in, so just Get one end in there and keep on pushing there. You heard it snap in. Get my handy dandy dental pick out and you'll see what I'm talking about. So when you go to disassemble this, first thing you're going to have to do is take the retaining ring, this guy out, because it's going to be around the boot like this. And in fact, I'll take this back out and go through that process because you'll want to see how that goes too. And so there it is. You can see the ring is keeping the balls from sliding all the way out. That what keeps everything inside there. So you cannot overextend it. Now, if you take a look at this, you can see there's no way to get that ring out. It's just nearly impossible. So what I do is I go around, and now this, when you go in and take the boot off, this is going to be full of grease. So I try to wipe off as much grease as possible, but there's still going to be a lot of grease in there. You're not going to be able to see the ring. So I'll do is I'll run the dental pick around, trying to find the end, and it'll snap in place as soon as it finds a little spot to drop down into. And that wasn't the axle I was talking about there, right there. So there's a gap right there. And when I have a fresh hub, I'll move that gap in the middle of the hub. Oh, there go the balls. I'll move that gap so it's in the middle of the hub. Then I'll grind down here because I don't have the ring in the way. So I'll grind it down, and I'll grab that end, rotate it around, and let me find out actually where I did grind it down. Oh, there's one spot right there. Looks like I have a couple places on here I did that. If you take a look, see that? Right underneath that ring. And out it comes. Oops, and then there it went back inside. But in any case, as you can see, it's really easy to get at. So I can lift it out as many times as I want. Now generally what I'll have is I won't have a hand on the axle because this will be on the quad, sitting still. And I'll actually have two dental picks to work it out all the way around. So I get the one end around and I start working this end around and just slowly lift it out like that. And then I'll grab it with the needle nose pliers, grab this end and just pull, and it'll just unwind from around there, it'll spiral out. But without the needle nose pliers, it's a little tougher job. Maybe I should come better prepared for this video than with my full complement of tools. Okay, I'm going to just shake all the ball bearings out, so there we go. It comes out. So now you get to see how I take this off. Very undignified, but it's just like this. It's just brute force. And there it comes. Okay, this is why I keep on using the hammer. Alright, so make sure this is, when you hit it and knock it off, it has some place to go and not into the dirt. Because you don't want to have all that stuff on it to clean up again. Let's go ahead and put the boot on. Because this boot is really going to illustrate something for you on when you reassemble these guys. Now I'm not going to put everything back together, I just want to show you about this boot. So okay, you've reassembled the CV joint, and notice this actually has a metal reinforcement ring around it. And so it's going to fit inside here. You can see it really nice and snug. Okay, and this retaining ring will go in here, and there's a groove in there. Now what I do when I take these out, before I put this back together, I will take a screwdriver or a dental pick and I'll go through that groove. And I'll clean it out really good so there's nothing in the way of this clip getting down in there. And again, normally I won't have to worry about an axle flopping around because it's sideways and supported by the arms. If I try to get a corner into that groove, working in the groove, this is really tough. It's not an easy thing to do. Push down on it this way and then push in at the same time so I can get some compression against that rubber. Okay, so once I get that started, then I just try to wiggle it in and keep on doing that all the way around. Now it may not be very successful the first time around, like you can see right there, it wants to pop right back out again. It's not being very cooperative at all. Well, so this is where my little tips and tricks come in. So you'll want to get the pliers of your choice. Vice grips work great. Any kind of plier that gives you a little bit of leverage, and you can crimp down this. Because what I'm going to do is I'm going to get this started, and I'm going to apply a little more force to get that into that groove, and then work it all the way around. See that? Ah, yeah, that's in the groove now. And so what I do by grabbing it at an angle and moving it back and forth, it just keeps on working it in all the way around. And so I'll continue to do this all the way around the hub. You gotta be careful not to damage the threads when you get in there. If I have some larger pliers like channel locks, I can grab it from across here and get in. So you keep on doing this all the way around, and once you're completed all the way circuit, you're not done yet. And I'll fast forward it and get to that spot in a moment, but in the meantime I'll just have to edit this stuff out a little later. So yeah, this can be a little bit of a pain, but it's definitely doable, and it doesn't have to be as much of a pain as it is for some people if you don't employ some of these techniques to get it out. Now, as I post this video, feel free to comment on it if you have some better ideas on how to get this done, because I'm sure everyone would love to know your tips and tricks on changing these rings, whether it's the inside ring or this retaining ring for the boot. I want to make sure it's in the groove. I don't want to just get it halfway in the groove. Let's see, it's starting on this side. There we go. I can feel it going there. And it's satisfying when it snaps in place. Yeah, it's going to pop it out again. Okay, so what you've done is you've got it so it sits in the groove all the way around. You think, aha, I'm done. Well, no. If you take a look at it, you can see that you can hardly see any of the edge of the rubber here, and you should be able to see a little sliver of rubber all the way around the inside. If this was fully seated, you'd see that. Kind of like it is up here. You see that little edge of rubber there? You should be able to see that all the way around. So you see the gap is here. I'm going to go directly across from the gap. I'm going to start here now and make sure that this gets seated all the way in, because that way it pulls evenly on both sides, and I can work my way around both sides pulling it. Because if I just start on one side and go around, by the time I get to this side, I'll be pulling this side out again. And I don't want to keep on doing rework. I don't care for rework. That is something I like to avoid whenever possible. Oh yeah. Yeah, it's got it inside the groove there. Okay, you can see now there's a little bit of a lip there on that rubber. So I'm going to look for that same amount of lip all the way around. That's what I like about these needle nose. I can grab just the edge without grabbing the rubber boot itself and work that ring in. You want to make sure this is well seated, because the last thing you want to do is be out on the trail and have this thing come out on you. People show rip boots and say, hey, how do I change this? You know, is it bad? I got to replace the axle and stuff? Well, no, you don't. Generally what happens, if you keep on inspecting your quad and you see after a ride that you have a rip boot, unless you've been through deep mud and stuff, generally speaking, there isn't going to be a whole lot of contaminants get inside. But if there is, you do have to clean it out. So when you replace the boot, pull the axle out. I mean, see if there's sand or dirt in there. If there is, you need to clean out both sides of your hub to make sure that you don't have anything in there grinding away at those bearing surfaces. Because the whole idea behind those bearing surfaces, they're nice and smooth and they'll glide on top of each other, and have a nice layer of grease in between. And that doesn't work very well if they're getting ground down by sand and rock and granite and stuff. So make sure that's clean before you put it back together. So we went around this side, now I'm going to come back this way. Yeah, it's seating in really good there now. So once you get it inside the groove, then it's not too bad coming around, just making sure it's well seated. You just have to be methodical about it though, and make sure that you do it. You don't want to do half a job here. It's too much of a pain to come back. Do the whole thing. Okay, so there you go. There's a retaining ring in there and holding that rubber boot in. Of course, the rubber boot doesn't look like that, it'll look like that. Alright, sounds good. You can do it now. Now there's one more thing. There's these clamps for the boots. Now obviously it's not for this one, this is for the outside, but they work the same way. As you come around here, you see this little tab catches on, well, like initially you'll just do it by hand, again, like this, so it sits on there. But then what you want to do is get a pair of pliers. Now I don't use these, I use channel locks. But you grab that part there and this part there, and you squeeze it together. And as you squeeze it together, this tab comes around, this piece right here, that comes around, and you can swing it down over. Let's see, this is going to go right in there. And there's barely enough room to do that. You've got to be squeezing hard to get it up there far enough to push it in and have it catch on those two notches there. And you can see those two pieces are just about right next to each other. So what I use is I take my channel locks, I put them on my grinder, and I grind them down so there's nice sharp corners, because it's that corner that's going to grab and get inside there and pull it together. Once I've done that, it makes pulling this together really, really easy. Otherwise, if it's the kind of rounded corners, what you're going to do is you're going to end up rounding off this edge and rounding off this edge, and you're going to have nothing to pull against. So it's going to be an uphill battle from there. So again, another tip, go put your pliers or your channel locks or whatever you have onto the grinder, grind across the face and across the side just so you have a nice sharp edge there. I mean, you open them up, take a look to make sure. And then that gives you something to pull those two pieces together with. Right there. So it pulls together and allows you to lock that in place. And they're really good. Once they're on there, they're on there. Another thing to consider when you're putting it on, in this case, the axle is going to be rotating this direction as it's driving forward. Well, as it's rotating, you don't want this end facing forward because it can grab onto a branch or something and peel it off. So turn around this way. So as it hits things, it just slips off the side and has nothing to catch onto. Okay, so it's always something to consider when you're putting the clamps on, is which way the axles are rotating. Same thing with your chain, master clip on a chain, same thing. You don't want the open end going forward. You want the curved end going forward. That way it doesn't accidentally snag on something. Well, I think it's my introduction for right now. I wanted to show you a couple things. Now, this will happen frequently. I already spoke a little bit about this hub and that busting off right there. Oh, look at another thing that, you know, yeah, broke one of those off too. This guy here, the outside bearing carrier. Now what Polaris did, you see this? See the nice beautiful bend that's in there? Yeah, this is a grade, what is it? It should be a, is it an 8.8? Polaris stock is 8.8. I have some 10.9s that I'm getting that are 160 millimeters long, and that's what I'm going to be putting here instead. Now, obviously it's bent. That's because there's a lot of force acting on here, and it's shearing, trying to shear this bolt off. Now, with the stock ones that Polaris has, and this is a different one that I bent, but what happened is that they have the threaded portion that's right there on that shear point, and so that's even a smaller diameter than the 10 millimeter out here. So I'm getting some longer bolts that'll have a solid part of the bolt going through there at a higher grade, instead of 8.8, it's a 10.9, and I will cut off and grind down the end of the threaded section so it'll still fit within a wheel, because those 9-inch wheels don't give you a lot of room to play with. So that's another weak spot to worry about. Now, I race and I get a lot of air, I slam to the ground, I'm really hard on machines. If you're casual trail riding, you'll never have this issue. And keep that in mind, a lot of the issues I come up with are because I really abuse my quad. And okay. Oh, now you can see the rest of my garage. This is my garage, by the way, not my shop. My shop is where I have my CNC equipment and I make things out of billet and such, and a lot of fun doing that stuff. I'm just starting the business up, so I don't have a lot of product out yet. I'm working on some products right now for the Polaris, in addition to some other items for, oh hey, there it is right now, my race quad, and behind it is the Wraith 1000, which is my big project this year that I'm still working on. I'm creating some front end, some heavy duty front end suspension components for that.